It is Wednesday, my dudes, which means it is time for another First Thoughts and Initial Impressions Epic 7 video. This one will be on Eternal Wanderer Ludwig, the newest Moonlight 5-star that was just shown earlier this morning over on YouTube. As with all of these first impression videos, I'll give you my 2 cents on the character. Do I think they're good? Where I'd play them? All that stuff you've come to expect from me in an impressions video. Can I just say though, before we get into the animation, damn, it feels good to say it is Wednesday, my dudes, again, and it actually be on a Wednesday. So let's do this, starting with the animation.
Now that you've met me, do you feel starstruck? How can I play with you? Oh, did I take it too far? Now who's up for an experiment?
I think Inori nailed it on the head with the S3 animation when he said a few weeks back that this thing is basically just Silverwolf's ultimate from Honkai Star Rail with a couple of changes. And that feels kind of phoned in what would otherwise be a really good year for S3 animations. Honestly, phoned in is kind of how I feel about a lot of things, and we'll obviously elaborate more about that when we talk about this character's skills in just a few moments. But before that, let's talk about the English voiceover artist for Ludwig in Epic 7, which is Christopher Sean. He is also the voice of all versions of Ken, as well as all versions of Roman. He is surprisingly most well known for being on the soap opera Days of Our Lives as a very prominent character. But he is also the voice of Nightwing from Gotham Knights and will be the voice of a character that is very near and dear to my heart, especially my father's heart, and that is the voice of Ultraman in the Netflix adaptation that will be coming out next year. Moving on to Eternal Wanderer Ludwig's stats, he is a Dark Mage of the Leo Zodiac symbol, which means he shares a stat line with his RGB counterpart Ludwig, as well as the collab hero Roy Mustang. He has 1,412 attack, 645 defense, 4,248 health, 112 base speed, 15% critical hit chance, 150% critical hit damage, and no starting effectiveness or effect resistance. This translates to the highest attack score in all of Epic 7, as well as an above average speed score at 112. Obviously, the drawback there is that it's just based on the criticals, and then obviously a very low health total at 4,248, with just okay defense at 645, at least for a mage. Imprint releases effectiveness for the team, and then imprint concentration is going to be critical hit chance, which is obviously a very, very good imprint concentration, which means you do want dupes. Unfortunately, I don't think that Smallgate and Super Creative will get a ton of extra money out of people for Ludwig, because there's only like 2 people I can think of, being YDCB and Elvmage, that actually play base Ludwig. So most of us who are veteran players who've been playing for 3, 4, or even possibly 5 years at this point probably have multiple copies of this character. As always, let's quickly run through each of the skills once before we talk about the character on the whole, starting with Eternal Wanderer Ludwig's skill 3, Can You Handle This? You acquired 3 souls upon use, and it has a 4-turn cooldown. Attacks all enemies with the essence of magical engineering. When someone uses a soul burn, increases combat readiness of the caster by 20%, and penetration rate of the skill by 30%. Penetration rate increase effect can stack up to 2 times to a maximum of 60%. Skill 2 is Let's Have Some Fun. It has a 3 to 4 turn cooldown depending on Malagora. Attacks the enemy with powerful mana, before granting increased hit chance for 2 turns, and skill nullifier once to the caster. Soulburn effect for the cost of 20 souls extends the duration of buffs granted by this skill by 1 turn, and grants an extra turn. And finally, the basic skill, How Trivial. Attacks the enemy with mana before increasing attack of the caster for 1 turn. Soulburn effect for the cost of 20 souls, extend duration of buffs granted by the skill by 1 turn, and grants an extra turn. You read that right, this character has 2 Soulburns. Okay, with the kit out of the way, let's take a quick detour with some story time. So a friend of mine and I have been talking for the better part of 3 to 4 years at this point about how there's somebody on the design team that just really, really likes Ludwig. They just love the character and the kit, and for some reason they just don't want to deviate from the fact that he's got to be a squishy mage that has a setup turn, and if you do the setup turn, then you get a 60% AoE defense penetrating move. That's kind of how it's always been through all the exclusive equipments, the changes, and everything. That's just basically what Ludwig's core identity has been the entire time. They just have it move from it. It's very similar to Melissa. It's just puzzling. We keep buffing a character, but not doing the very obvious thing that the character needs, which is soul burn, take an extra turn so that they can do their thing, right? Well, if you look at Eternal Wanderer Ludwig, that's basically the kit. He's not too much different than base Ludwig. Yeah, it's a little bit harder for him to get to 60% defense penetration, but he's got a way easier setup turn, right, than Ludwig does. So you're just going to go in with him and soul burn S2, which is also your survivability skill, just like with regular Ludwig, because regular Ludwig is invincibility as opposed to a skill nullifier. And then you just fire off the S3 and you cleave and you win. I guess the biggest plus in the kit here is that there is hit chance on skill 2, because I guess at this point Smilegate has to know that Save Your Odds kind of a problem and is showing up at very high level at a very high frequency with a very high win rate. That's why everything seems like it has hit chance built into it now, because they're trying to force that character to not be as good as it actually is. But overall, I feel like this is kind of a waste of a Moonlight 5-star. I'm sorry if that sounds harsh, but it really does. Aside from Silverblade Araminta, almost every Moonlight 5-star, at least the ones that I can think of, is drastically different than their RGB counterpart, in the sense that they kind of do different things, right? Like even the characters that are kind of similar, like Crow and Last Rider Cut, yeah, they're both mitigation characters, but you know, Crow is like protecting the whole team, largely from burst damage because of the defense buff, and then has a single target nuke, whereas Last Rider Crow is more of a, kind of stop AoE damage from happening, and then I get AoE damage as a result. So that's kind of the most similar, but like, I don't think anyone here would say like Ray and Death Dealer Ray do the same thing for the most part. That's kind of just like, again, something that's completely different. Kisei versus Judge Kisei, not the best example, but Kisei is a burst assassin, whereas Judge Kisei is more of a disruptive character. So again, yeah, I always have this thing where in my head, the Moonlight 5-star should feel distinctly different than the RGB counterpart. And when I look at Ludwig versus ML Ludwig here, they feel pretty much the same, at least to me. Again, I'm not a cleaver though. That's just what it is. It's a variation on a unit that's already very niche. That said, I do think this character is actually pretty good if you are a cleaver. At the end of the day, Cleave is kind of not super great now, and they honestly needed another really strong cleanup character. And, you know, Ludwig could be that character, because right now, cleavers are out there playing things like Jacko Valentine or Requiem Rowana, or maybe you're doing Commander Pavel Cleave. And then you have some holdouts, like I know Lucina plays things like Bloodblade Corinne. You have other people that try to make Bryceria work if she's not pre-banned. So, you know, there's options for Cleave, but not nearly as many as there used to be. So having something that is kind of reliable, like Ludwig, maybe that's what they needed. I don't know if it's necessarily the case. Again, I'm not a cleaver, but having another tool in the kit wouldn't be so bad, because again, right now, Cleave, kind of the worst playstyle in RTA, and at least in my opinion, right? Right now, it's pretty obvious you're playing Book, by the way, on this character. Just because he's got 2 soul burns, you basically pick what you need. Do you need hit chance or survivability? You just soul burn the S2. Otherwise, just take the attack buff on the skill 1. And then obviously, if you have the attack buff from another ally anyway, you're just going to soul burn the skill 2. As for actual gear sets, Destruction set seems like the no-brainer because it gives the most amount of gear score. But I guess speed could also work. Attack maybe too, but again, attack just doesn't mathematically give anywhere near as much as Destruction or speed at this point. So use at your own risk. As for offsets, Torrent, because he's an AoE burst character, so that's pretty much the go-to. Anybody who's going to be playing this guy, it's probably going to be Destruction Torrent, I feel like, for the most part. And we've already talked about it, but Artifact is Tegel's Ancient Book. There's just no reason not to. Character has 2 soul burns, both of them cost 20 souls, have the extra turn stable to them, which at this point, if you've watched some of my videos, you already know extra turn soul burn is pretty much the best thing you can do on a soul burn in the entire game. At this point, Book is here to stay. I guess it's never going away. It's never getting nerfed. Maybe In my dreams, it'll get restricted to one, because obviously if you just play a bunch of books on a team, you can just soul burn all day with this character by going like S2, S1, S1, S3, and that'll be pretty good. Just cleave the entire team. So yeah, if you're a cleave player, seems like a pretty no-brainer pickup if you are looking for another really strong finisher. Not necessarily a setup, but a finisher. As for the rest of us that are not cleave based, I do think he has some value in other game modes, right? I actually think because he has the 20% combat readiness push in his kit on a soul burn, that he might be decent in Abyss. I'm not going to say he's like better than Spectre or, you know, even like Landy or SSB. Like, right? Those are like have been traditionally the strongest Abyss characters as far as DPS goes. But I think that there might be something there. He might just have strong enough multipliers where he can get there. AoE attacks are pretty valuable on some Abyss floors anyway. So I definitely think he could have some value there. And just like Commander Pavel, he's probably pretty good at farming adventure or unrecorded history. The problem is that, like, you're not really pulling Moonlight 5 stars for things like farming Abyss or adventure, right? Like, that's not, at least to me, that's not what I'm pulling for. If you are, then more power to you. But again, yeah, it doesn't exactly thrill me. Other than that, last place I could really think of to use the character on is obviously going to be Arena Offense. He might actually be the best character for Arena Offense when you pair him with somebody like Astromancer or Elena. Right now, a lot of defenses are on things like, I would say, Abyssal Euphine, Navy Captain Landy, things like that. That's kind of the bulk, I think, of arena defenses and like even Guild War defenses. And there might be some combination of characters that makes him really good at cleaving those things. That said, characters very obviously rely on book. So if you're playing him in RTA, you're going to be banning Bellion. And I expect if this character becomes a very popular character for Arena Offense, then yeah, we're going to see a resurgence of Bellion defenses. Not like she left mine in the first place. But yeah, overall, that's kind of it. Ludwig doesn't really get me excited. I think he's a solid character. If you like him, absolutely pull for him. He definitely feels like he has some value because he's just a fixed version of what I've traditionally considered a very flawed character. Yeah, it's just disappointing at the end of the day. I think that they could have taken their time and put this kit on base Ludwig, like fixed him up, shipped him out the door with a new coat of paint, and that would have been great for all of the Ludwig enjoyers and the Ludwig fans. And for the rest of us that were looking for something that was unique or kind of changed the status quo, shook things up, we could have gotten something a little bit more unique. Yeah, because just the fact that it's a recycled kit on a class that can use book that just happens to want book and doesn't really have any regard for other mage artifacts. And the fact that he also just looks like a blatant ripoff from one of our competitors' games just makes me feel like the character was just kind of slapped together and shoved out the door without a lot of love and care put into it, which was very obviously present with Abyssal Euphine and her unique design and her really fun gameplay patterns. So overall, yeah, this character, not really for me. But again, from a gameplay perspective, I do think he's fine, especially for those of you out there who are cleave players or very aggressive players or just people who like playing arena in general. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments below how you feel about ML Ludwig. Are you going to be pulling for him? Or are you going to be waiting for any potential reruns or whoever comes next, whether that's Zio or whichever ML5 is going to come out after Ludwig, at least for the new characters. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. As always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and also for my American fam out there, enjoy your Thanksgiving. I will catch you all on the next one. Bye-bye now.